Hello everyone, this is Professor Reimer. This video is a reteach of our Unit 2 DOL 3 on classical Greece. Remember, our objective was to explain the major effects of the development of the classical civilization of Greece by responding to a prompt. The prompt has been the same one we've been working on all unit, or the major effects and lasting influences, this time of classical Greece. And let me pause here, guys, and say I saw growth. I saw much improved writing samples from many of you. Those of you who are putting in the work, I'm seeing the growth. Stick with it. It's working. All right. Let me also say that there was a typo in my assignment instructions. The question was correct. What were the major effects and lasting influences of classical Greece? However, in my sample, I had forgotten to change Persia to Greece because I just copy and pasted from the old one. And so many of you told me about classical Persia. And to that, I will say I'm not perfect. So, I make mistakes from time to time. But also, guys, be active participants in your own life story. Don't blindly just follow along and not think. The lesson was on classical Greece. The question asked you about classical Greece. So yeah, okay, the prompt had the wrong word. You could have at least emailed me, called me, texted me, and asked me, hey, was that a typo? Right? But so many of you just passively told me about classical Persia, even though you'd already done that in the previous lesson in DOL 2. Right? So be active participants in your own life story. Don't let other people or other factors unduly influence you. You take control of your life and you get what you need to do. All right. So let's look at those examples. Here's one. Right. These beginning understandings. Major effects and lasting influences of classical Persia. Again, wrong question. Where the Athens was destroyed by the Persians, and the ancient Persians invented their own alphabet, the wind power machine, and Contis, a water irrigation system. They also developed their own coinage system. The ancient Persian leaders worked hard to ensure their empire succeeded. There's no argument here, besides that it's answering the wrong question. Okay, I'm looking for an argument about the lasting influences. So this next example, they answered the right question. The major effects and lasting influences of classical Greece were, and then just listed off a bunch of facts. The Battle of Marathon, in which Persians were ambushed by a Greek army and were killed. Another effect influences the Delian League, which was a defensive alliance that the Athenians and some other Greeks formed against the Persians. One last effect influence was the Age of Pericles, which was the period of classical Athenian and Greek history. There's also when a direct democracy was created by Pericles. All right. If you are writing proper nouns and key terms and events in your thesis statement, you're doing it wrong. That is not the place for that information. That information belongs in body paragraphs and belongs as evidence. Okay. Arguments and your own ideas belong in thesis statements. For example, in this next section, these are emerging understanding. These are our passing scores. Excuse me. The major effects and lasting influences of classical Persia. Okay, right now I'm thinking, is the student going to tell me about classical Greece? Is the student going to be telling me about classical Persia? I don't know. Or governance, religion, and economy. I was generous. I gave the student the benefit of the doubt that they used my wrong model, but told me about classical Greece. But there's not a lot here. Remember, we're looking for just right specificity. Here is an example of not enough specificity. There's not an argument here. Governance, you could say that about any place at any time in history. Religion, again, you could say that about any place at any time. You have to be specific in your main ideas to the actual item you're discussing. In this case, classical Greece. All right, next example. One of the major effects and lasting influences of classical Persia, again, I gave them benefit of the doubt. Maybe they just used my wrong example. Was the architecture, because the most important form was a temple, which was dedicated to a god or goddesses, and also the pantheons search for calmness and freedom of speech and clarity. So the one key idea, the one main point, is the influence of architecture. Period. period. That is where the student should have ended that sentence. The rest of that information, that belongs in a body paragraph. That does not belong in a thesis statement, which is in the introduction. Okay? Again, if you're starting to give me examples and details, that you're writing the essay, which is great, but that needs to go in body paragraphs, not in a thesis statement. All right, let's look at some proficient examples. All right, the major effects and lasting influences of classical Greece were architecture, sculpture, and Socratic method. Now, not enough specificity, but very historically accurate, which is why I gave it a proficient. Did the Greeks have lasting influence on architecture? Yes. Lasting influences on sculpture? Yes. Lasting influences on Socratic method? Yes. Even though key term, I would prefer a different way of describing that. We'll see an example in just a minute. Okay. Remember, in these, when you needed to get to the more specificity, we're looking for verbs, adjectives, adverbs that make you argumentative. Not there yet in this example. The major effects and lasting influences of classical Greece were their literature and theater, two strong examples, but not enough specificity. Or the major effects and lasting influences of classical Greece were democracy, the alphabet, and the library. The last one, not so great, but democracy and the alphabet, yes, but again, not enough specificity. I need more. Not quite as much as this next student. The Greeks made important contributions to philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. The question is about the major influences, not all of them. Okay, so you have to answer the question, make an argument about the major ones. And then the student goes on, literature and theater were important aspects. So now you've gone in a different direction. The Greeks were also known for their sophisticated sculpture and architecture. Greek culture influenced the Roman Empire and many other civilizations, and it continues to influence modern cultures today. Now, there's a lot of good stuff in this almost paragraph, and I'm going to use this example to show you a finished product in just a minute. So remember this one. We're going to come back to it. But before we do, let's look at these advanced examples. The major effects and lasting influences of classical Persia, again, typo on my part and also on the student part, so I was generous, were sculpture of human form. Oh, see, some detail. What kind of sculpture? Sculpture of human form. Democracy and jury systems. Okay, a little bit more detail. And science and astronomy advances. Right, a verb. I love it. Not quite as much as I love this last one. This is probably the best example I got. The major effects and lasting influences of classical Greece were a learning method. A learning method. Now, I wish the student hadn't said called Socratic method. Don't need to do that, but we're still learning, so that's okay. So you're giving specificity that's above what you're about to talk about. So the student is obviously going to talk about the Socratic method in the essay, but don't say that right away. Just hint at it with something like a learning method. A method of learning through open discussion and questioning. Again, giving some description, not really appropriate in a thesis statement, but we're learning. And also gave us on how to sculpt people's faces and how to make a full body sculpture. That is what I'm talking about with specificity. Some verbs, some details, but not too much. It didn't tell me some names of sculptors. It didn't tell me styles of sculptors. It just says, you know, they invented this method of sculpting people's faces and how to make full body sculptures. That's the level of specificity we're looking for in thesis statements. It's going to take lots of practice, guys, where you too hot, too cold, just right. You'll get there. Now, I've said all this unit that our final product is going to be a 2-paragraph essay, introduction with a thesis, body paragraph. So let me show you what that looks like using the example of this student right here. So how do I know it's 2 paragraphs? It's because there's 2 indentions. Please, when you're writing paragraphs in essays, indent is very important so I know where your paragraphs are. Now, I edited it, and let's see how I edited it. The major effects and lasting influences of classical Greece were their important contributions to the arts, philosophy, and medicine. Now, each of these 3 main points, they become your main ideas in your body paragraphs. Each main idea gets one body paragraph. So how many paragraphs are we eventually going to have in our essays? 3 main body paragraphs. We're going to have 3 main points. Right now, I'm only asking for 1 body paragraph. So the student originally had philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and then started talking about literature and theater, sculpture, and art. So what I did is I stepped back from those more detailed words and I said the arts, this broad umbrella under which literature and theater, sculpture, and architecture go. See what I did there? Now, eventually, we will add to our intro paragraphs with contextualization. We're not there yet, but we'll go there. So I know it's only a 1-sentence paragraph, but that's because we're still building that foundation. So, second paragraph begins with a topic sentence like we practiced in the last unit. I kept the student sentence. It was a wonderful sentence. Literature and theater was an important aspect of Greek culture and influenced modern culture. Answers the question. It's related to the thesis up here. The arts, literature and theater are kinds of arts. It's wonderful. It tells me as the reader, I know where this paragraph is going. Now, everything in that paragraph has to be about literature and theater and influencing modern culture. Let's see how I did. The Greeks invented the genre of drama and performed plays in outdoor theaters. Facts, evidence, where did I get it from? Sources, this time the book. Now I need to link that fact to my topic sentence. This genre and practice have continued to this day. Remember, I'm arguing that literature and theater influence modern culture, and I'm telling you, it's still around. Drama, and outdoor theaters, those still around. New piece of evidence. The first Greek dramas were known as tragedies. Again, I'm name dropping some key terms. These tragedies dealt with issues that humans still face. I'm explaining the connection between the Greeks' creation of tragedies and influence on modern culture. Third piece of evidence. The Greeks also invented the writing of history. Now I'm going to name drop some more. Thucydides, perhaps the greatest Greek historian, was the first writer to see the actions of humans and not gods as the causes of events. Got to link it to the topic sentence of influencing modern culture. Explaining why events happened in the past is what historians ever since have attempted to do. That is what historians do. We do not tell the stories of the past. We seek explanations of the past. We seek the why, not the what. And then I kept the students' sentence. It was a wonderful concluding sentence. Greek culture influenced the Roman Empire and many other civilizations, and it continues to influence modern cultures today. A wonderful way to conclude that paragraph. Now notice I added this third paragraph because remember, in the student's original example, it also had this sentence on sophisticated sculpture and architecture. Now, I thought that was the wonderful start of a new body paragraph. Remember, you need to stay within one main idea. So the student originally started talking about literature and theater. So you need to provide examples, evidence for literature and theater. This other 2 ideas, sculpture and architecture, would probably require a different paragraph. So that's why I moved it there. But for your final writing assignment in this unit, I'm looking for 2 body paragraphs. Boom. That's a great model. 1-sentence introduction with your argument, and then a body paragraph giving evidence for one of your main points. Not all 3, not yet. Okay, there it is, guys. A reteach of Unit 2 DOL 3 with a sample 2-paragraph essay. I hope it helps. Please let me know what else I can do to help you become better writers. I'll see you in class.